Welcome to Season 6 of the Up To podcast. 9 years ago, Up To was formed as a live event series showcasing leaders who are as humble as they are successful. The humility piece is extremely important as we identify leaders who can inspire others. We try to focus our interviews on the non-business aspects of their lives, and in doing so, we have found there is a real thirst to explore their hearts and minds in atypical ways. Our host, as always, is the founder and creator of Up To, Adam Kaufman. And on this episode, we are joined by highly acclaimed marketing guru, Jeff Charney. We'll be right back.
If you're a business owner, an executive, or a rising member of a management team, I don't have to tell you about the importance of having team members and partners you can trust. A firm that I've worked with for years and have trusted myself to refer my colleagues to is VividFront, an award-winning digital marketing, branding, and website development firm based in Cleveland, Ohio, but with clients all over America. VividFront's focus is on scaling brands digitally. They create holistic, return on investment centric strategies and solutions for middle market companies who want to grow. They do paid advertising, influencer and social media marketing, e-commerce strategies, lead generation websites. I could go on. Their expertise is expansive, and their tactful leadership team, all of whom I know, has the entrepreneurial experience to turn ideas into revenue-producing business plans. Yes, I am reading a script, but I will tell you that I sought VividFront out for this podcast because I already believed in them, seeing what they did in the marketplace. So if you're seeking a partner to take your business to the next level, or if you're looking for an opportunity to work for a top agency with an amazing culture, truly an amazing culture, check out their website at vividfront.com or send me a note and I'll introduce you to my friends who run the company there. VividFront, great organization. It's no exaggeration that today's guest operates at the very top of his field. That's what his peers and his industry leaders think. He is a creative brand marketing genius. When Adweek names him the top marketer of the year, in another trade publication, Advertising Age awarded our guest Brand Chief Marketing Officer of the Year, it's quite evident our guest today has earned all of the accolades coming his way. Yet, and here's what I love, the guy remains humble and quite authentic. And while there's a good chance you won't recognize his name, there's truly no chance you won't recognize his work. Our superstar guest has created and led the national brand campaigns featuring Flo, the progressive insurance expert, a character so enduring that Flo's been on our TV for 16 years now, and the Aflac Duck, the iconic waterfall we've all watched and listened to for now 24 years. 2 years ago, our guest stepped away from his decades-long run as a Fortune 500 chief marketing officer when he was still at the top of his game, just like the running back Barry Sanders did when he was an NFL all-time great, and for sports fans as old as me, like Hall of Famer Lynn Swann did after winning many Super Bowls with the Pittsburgh Steelers, leaving while you're on top. Always willing to take chances, today's guest said goodbye to a multi-billion-dollar ad budget to completely disrupt the creative marketing industry. He's now the CEO and founder of Make History and Make History AI, which I'm sure we'll get into. With a mind that he tells me never stops generating ideas, the guy's a QR code on his neck. He and his team are the first to dispel the long-held myth that you can't teach a machine to be creative. He earned his undergraduate degree from the University of South Carolina and an MBA from The Ohio State University, and has impressively received Alumni of the Year awards from both schools. He and his wife have 5 children, and he recently told me that the realization that he's turning into his parents led to one of the most humorous and successful commercials on television right now. Jeff Charney, welcome to the Up To podcast.
Hey, nice to be here. I love that Barry Sanders reference, man. I love it.
Well, what have you been up to?
Man, Adam, what have I not been up to? I tried to step away from the vehicle, literally a few years ago, and I got involved in this thing called Make History, and I made it invite only, thinking that I'd maybe work a few hours a day. But when you say invite only, it turns into Studio 54, and I've been working nonstop ever since. And I started Make History, and then a couple hundred days after I started Make History, the ChatGPT boom came out, and we ended up starting Make History AI, and I'm unfortunately working 60-hour, 80-hour weeks like I was when I was back at corporate America, which is great for me. I love it. It's just not great for my family right now, especially my wife.
So tell me, what is it like being an entrepreneur? It's a little different than being in a corporate environment.
It's totally different. And in so many ways, Adam, it's almost like when you go to school, when you go to college, and you realize once you get out of college, a few years after you're out of college, like, how did I do that? I look at corporate America, which was incredibly wonderful to me, but man, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I did it every day, never missed a day for almost 4 decades. It's different, and it's just like almost a little bit more freeing to be your own boss. Although I had great bosses, it's just more freeing to be your own boss, cover your own schedule, work your own routines, and I'm like a different person. And I have color in my face, I have a gleam in my eye again, and it's exciting.
I want to delve into what you were doing in the corporate world, but sticking with this real quick, was it a big decision? How long did you labor over that decision to make this massive change? Was it something you did because of an event that occurred, or was it more something you thought about for a long time? I'm always interested in how high achievers make big decisions.
I loved where I was, especially at Progressive, and I loved the people I was working with. And I remember when I went in to tell my boss, it was, I knew, I'd done it so many times. I had just won CMO of the Year for the second time. We had a very big budget. We were hitting on all cylinders. And I remember my dad, who was in New York, from New York, Brooklyn, New York, and he said, Jeffrey, when you're at your top is when you got to drop the microphone. And I was just peaking at the time. I'm not going to get a bigger budget. I'm not going to win more awards. Our campaigns are killing. And I went into my boss and said, look, I want to do this. And she was wonderful, just wonderful. And she understood it. She's a marketer as well. And she understood me. And she said, look, let's take a year, think it through, get your successor. I'll let you do what you want to do. But, and at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something a little different.
So you left not knowing what was next. You just knew it was time for a new season.
I did, and I remember sitting, I got up the next morning. Literally, it was so hard. I worked until I worked a full year. Once I told her as a corporate officer, you had to tell people. I worked a full year. I literally left it, late at night, the Friday night. On Monday morning, I got up at like 6:15, like I always do. I walked to my office. I wrote the word MAKEHISTORY on a sheet of paper. And I looked at that for a long time because I knew I wanted to make history. And finally, I just figured my parents were teachers. And I said, look, I remember the vowels. And I took out A in Make History. I took out E in Make History. I took out I in Make History. I took out O. And what was left was you. And the only person standing in the way of me making history is me. It's you. It's you. It's for people out there. And it just hit me like the lock-in idea, Jeff, MKHSTRY, which is the name of my company. That's what I want to do. And that's what I'm going to do from here on in. And it took a while. It took like literally a half day just to keep looking at those letters. And when I did, I was so excited.
We're getting a peek into the ideation process about your company, which you used to apply to your idea creation with your campaigns, your characters, flow, etc. And this is where you're spending your time now, is how to recreate that. But you mentioned the parental influence, your dad telling you what he said, but also the teachers in your family. Do you think the type of family you were born into somehow motivates you, or what was it like growing up? Like what is it like at age 15 for you in rural South Carolina? The guy who has a QR code tattoo on his neck, even currently, what's that guy doing at age 15 in South Carolina?
Again, Adam, to be pretty honest, I was not the cool kid I am now. I'm not that cool now anyway, but I was not even close to who I was then. And I studied a lot. My parents were teachers. I was a kid that was always studying. And I remember fourth grade, I wasn't nerdy. I wasn't a cool kid. So I was studying. And even in the fourth grade, Adam, I was studying for a spelling bee to show you how committed I was because my parents were teachers. And I remember studying for that spelling bee and driving with my mother to school. And I had really studied hard. People were playing outside. I saw them playing outside. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be worth it. And I remember getting out of her car and just looking at my mom, kind of reassuringly say, Mommy, you think you're going to win? I think I'll win the spelling bee. And my mother, was from deep South. She took a drag out of her cigarette, rolled down the window, exhaled, and said, Jeffrey, why not? You've done the work. You've done the work. And it wasn't the most motivational thing she could ever say to me. It was one of those things like, God, what did she just say to me? I was marching to school, and I thought about it, like, why not? I've done the work. And I got up on that stage. First word was separate, which is still a tough word for anybody.
Yeah, I spell check that still. Yeah, right.
It was brutal.
I don't know if there's an A or an E there towards the end. I don't know. I still don't know.
I'm telling you, in the fourth grade, I nailed it. I was like a caged animal in the fourth grade getting up on that stage. I spelled separate wrong, and I ended up winning that spelling bee. And I told my mother, and she said, well, you did the work. She was pleased and she was proud, but you did the work. And it was one of those things, it's really applied, from fourth grade on. Like, if you do the work, why not you? Why not you? And I'm a very humble person, but if you really work hard, you're the only one standing in your own way. That's to make history. AEIOU. You're the only one standing in the way. If you do the work, why not win?
Awesome.
But that's a little bit about me at 15.
I love picturing you in fourth grade, getting nervous, getting excited about the spelling bee, and your mom, dropping you off before she goes to work. It's a vivid memory, and for it to still be with you today, it must have had quite an impact. And
literally, I can see it in slow motion, Adam, and I think about it a lot. My dad was also, he was a teacher as well. He taught DECA, which was almost like marketing for kids who weren't going to go to college. So he was always a marketer. He was always thinking. He was always doing that kind of stuff. And I even remember, again, Adam, I'll go deep into this and come in hot, as I always do. But I remember, in high school, there was this girl, and I'm going to keep her name. I keep her name out of this, but it's
probably a good idea. We've been downloaded in 90 countries. You don't want to say her name.
So just think about when you're 16 years old and you have this crush. And this woman was, she was captain of the cheerleaders. She was homecoming queen, way out of my league. But she talked to me. Mm-hmm. And so I thought her talking to me was pretty cool. And
did you have hair? Did you have hair then? I'm trying to picture. Did you have hair? Did you have I had a mullet. I had a mullet at 16. Soccer player mullet.
Mine was worse than a mullet. It was like big, almost like an afro. It was not pretty. If I have some pictures, I'll show it to you.
Oh, I bet it was pretty.
It was thick. And I remember talking to her in high school, and she was talking to me, and I kept telling my dad, I'm going to ask her out. That's it. My dad was from Brooklyn, New York. Jeffrey, ask her out already. Ask her out. So finally I go, and my heartbeat, ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. I'm asking her out, and she kind of looks right through me. And she was sweet. She just kind of smiled, and I kind of walked away. I kind of walked away, and I literally almost wanted to run home. And I remember running home, talking to my dad and mother, and say, "How'd it go? I said, "Didn't go that well, and it was tough." And my dad kept saying, "Jeffrey, you gotta snap out of this, man. You gotta snap out of it." And I couldn't snap out of it. And finally, she was going to run for student council office, and I was so resentful that I decided to run against her.
Oh my! I didn't know this is where the story was going.
No, I decided to run against her, and she's the homecoming queen. I'm this nerdy kid, just a cute kid, but just not all that. And I literally mount a campaign, Adam, that is, I literally put posters on the wall, 4 posters on the wall. You could only get 4. I hired an artist, Dan Davis, who did the poster. Fred and Barney say vote for Charney.
Don't tell me you
With your
won.
last breath, say vote for Jeff. It was like a Mad Magazine kind of thing. Keep Charney off the streets, knife in my mouth. Jeff Will, all these 4K. Then I put the campaign together, I put posters. I shook every kid's hand. Gave them different candy and stuff like that, all this kind of stuff. And I wrote a speech at him that was probably the best speech of my life. I don't do that much speaking, but this was at 16 years old, 17 years old. I wrote this speech, and I remember the person went before me. She did her speech, and it was just like a rah-rah, typical speech that anybody can do, off the shelf.
Yeah.
And at 17 years old, I never felt more confident than even today. I never felt more confident. When I walked up there, I was so ready for it, and I nailed it. And right after the assembly, the bell rang, and people voted. With just that right on their mind.
We got out the vote. Got out the vote. You won.
Got out the vote, and I won then and there. And I have never looked back and said, I'm going to be a marketer. And I used it out of vengeance. It was out of vengeance. And what if I use marketing for the greater good? I mean, how great could that be? And then and there, I knew I was going to be in marketing. So a couple of interesting stories. You asked me, I'm telling you, and it just
No, but that gives us a good
years
peek.
later.
Thank you. That gives a peek into like the mind and the heart of what drives us. We're all products of our own experiences. You've just shared a couple, the one with your mother, and now the one where the cheerleader dissed you, but then you beat her in the campaign. But that motivates you, and to this day now, a few decades later, you're like an adult version of that. You're still creative, you're motivated, you're driving, you're trying new things differently. Like that was a different way with the Mad themed poster. So I love how we're getting a peek into like what you're answering my question. This was the 15-year-old you. This is the QR code on his neck guy at age 15.
And it's never stopped, Adam. I don't know about your listeners or anybody else, but I always knew what I wanted to do after that. I knew that I could out-create people. I'm not the smartest guy in the room then nor now, but I could do one thing very well, and that would be creative. And it doesn't have to be creative in a light bulb kind of moment thing, just creative solutions. I'm just one of these people, you could drop me in the middle of anywhere with no money, I'll figure out a way. And that's it. And not many people got out of that town. They don't always get out of that town. They stay in that town. And, my mother and my dad just instilled me that you can, if you do the work, you can
do the
why
work.
Not you?
Do the work. So I know you spent time in Los Angeles, but can you give us a little summary about your rise, your ascension to like the top of corporate marketing? I mean, how did you go from that high school victory to literally the top of your field in corporate marketing?
And first of all, we had no money growing up. We just didn't. I had scholarships at undergrad and I had scholarships at grad school. And then I remember, I was this overachiever, and I'm not, again.
That creates some hunger too, though, doesn't it? Not being born into financial wealth, that creates a hunger as well. It can. Same with me. I was the first in my family to go to college. Neither one of my parents graduated from college, and it does create a drive, doesn't it?
It's a drive, and it's also a fear that I never want my kids to ever worry like I did, because I worried. I mean, I helped my mother. I've been working since I was 13 years old. I helped her out and really tried to do that, but I just never want my kids to do it. But I remember literally at Ohio State, when I was in grad school, I stayed there. I worked on a word processor in those days. And
probably
I
Brother brand.
Office.
I used Brother, the brand Brother. Remember
exactly.
that?
Brother was it, man. Brother was it.
Yeah.
Weighing computers and all that stuff. And I remember working during Christmas, and I worked on the president's office in a word processor. And I sent all these resumes out, figuring that I had a 4.0 average and all these things, that everybody would come to me, and they didn't. But I finally got the resumes out, and I did finally. After really working hard, I had 2 job offers. One was in Columbus and one was in New York, both at ad agencies. And I got this call. I went back to my room one day. They had no answering machines those days. I went back to my room. My phone was ringing off the hook. I pick it up. It's this company in Boston called Raytheon. They said, look, we want you to come out. We got your resume. I said, I don't know who Raytheon is. I don't know anything about Boston, but I'd never been to Boston. They were going to pick me up, Adam, in a limo. I'd never been in a limo. And it was one of those things where I'll go. And that was my first job. like I already had 2 job offers, but I'd never been to Boston. I sat in this guy's office and I was so comfortable because I didn't want the job because I knew I had something else. I was so comfortable in my own skin. I was pulling books off his shelf. I was just chatting with him. I didn't really dress up for it. I was just myself. And I got the job. That was my first job, Raytheon. And my boss was the greatest human being in the world. He recognized something in me and he let me be myself. And he was kind of a teacher himself. He taught at BU, and he taught me things and he got me ready. I went from Raytheon, then I followed another boss at Raytheon to Rockwell International after the Space Shuttle Challenger tragedy. He brought me in there I was so young, to help him and others start a new marketing department in California. So I went from Raytheon to Rockwell. And then I was fortunate enough to meet Eli Broad and Kaufman and Broad. Another story we'll talk about.
Big home builder, yep.
Big home builder.
No relation to me, unfortunately.
I wish we all were related to him, but he did very well, and I worked there, and then worked at Homestore.com, which was the .com era in California, which was just an incredible rush of adrenaline, and then went from Homestore to QVC and just things like that, QVC, Aflac, and Progressive. It's just been, but I was always the youngest manager, youngest director, youngest VP, youngest SVP. Now I'm not so young anymore, man. It's tough.
Not the youngest kind of room anymore, right?
No, it was different. But I always had great people around me. Sorry.
I like the beginning of that story when Raytheon, the defense contractor, says they want to interview you and they're going to send a limo to pick you up and you've never been to Boston before. Just today I was watching an interview. I don't know if you saw how the Phoenix Coyotes hockey team has been lost to a new owner in Utah, and it's a big news in the sports world. So the Phoenix hockey team in the NHL is moving, and so they're interviewing the owner of the new team in Utah, and he's younger than me. He's 45. He's a founder of a tech company worth over $1 billion, and he was saying, kind of like what you did when you said yes to Boston, like, don't blink. If you get a chance, just go for it, and then you can figure it out later, but don't blink. Don't hesitate when you get that big opportunity. It's kind of like you had this perfect swing or a perfect pitch to take a big swing, and you didn't hesitate. You took the swing.
No, definitely, and you have to. I mean, never just get the job, get the job, and then you can say no later. Just go. And I've always been open to so many things. I never thought I didn't work on the defense side of Raytheon. I worked on the commercial side, but I never thought I'd work in corporate America. I remember my boss telling me, "Look, you don't want to work on that agency side because you're always beholden to the company. Mm-hmm. You want to work where you can control." And he just taught me everything. He was one of these guys. He was getting ready to retire, and he said, "I'm going to let the kid go crazy. I'm going to let him. I'll send him all over the country, all over the world." Because he trusted me. And I've always, since then, he was one of the best bosses I've ever had. And I've always worked for great people. And I've always tried to replicate that by just trusting the person, tell them, teach versus tell. Teach them first, then tell them later. And it's been a beautiful thing. I kept in touch with him until he passed, a little bit ago. And it's just like, he made an impact in my life. And he told me I would have been in the agency world, which is probably a different world for me than corporate world.
I want to talk a little bit about something you mentioned a few minutes ago, always being the youngest guy in the situation or the youngest guy in the position. You don't know this about me, but at a really young age, I matriculated up to a kind of a big role at a major lobbying group in Washington, the National Rifle Association. And at one point, just the CEO and I were traveling together to a city, and I was his helper. He's the leader. I was the special assistant. But in D.C., special assistant is kind of like a title that can be a big role. And I had the speech that he was giving, and we were meeting at the airport. And while we're at the airport, the office called, his secretary called, and we called them secretaries back then, executive assistant, I guess.
Yes.
Adam, Mr. Heston can't make the trip. Charlton Heston was the president of the NRA, the actor, Charlton Heston. Legend. He has to tend to some emergency. I'm like, okay, I'll turn around. I'll come back to the office. And the executive assistant said to me, no, we want you to do the speech on his behalf. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, they're expecting an Academy Award-winning actor at this thing down in Atlanta. I'm literally, they don't know me from Adam, no pun intended. You know, I was 27. No, we're confident that you can do it, Adam. It was a Chamber of Commerce, 400 of like the who's who of Atlanta. And I was such an imposter. They trained me for a year in public speaking, but I felt, how on earth do I get myself into these situations? So this is a longer story than I planned on bringing up. I'm sorry. This is supposed to be more about you, but just that I can relate
No, I love hearing it.
the being young. And how did you deal with being young with a lot of responsibility in these roles as you kept getting promoted and getting bigger budgets and bigger teams?
I think the energy that, my boss, the confidence they had in me, it helped. It made me more confident. I may be a little overconfident in certain ways because there's certain times where I raised my hand where I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have at all raised my hand, but I did. And I think just that energy begets energy kind of thing where, hey, they think I can do it, so maybe I can do it. And I would just outwork. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I will outcreate and I will outwork, outthink, outmaneuver, all these things. But it's just like I just had, from those early days on in South Carolina, I just felt decent about myself because the world of corporate America helped me feel more decent about myself by the confidence they had in me. I remember sitting in my boss's office, my boss's boss office, and the CEO said, hey, we just got an FBI raid in Rocky Flats, Colorado. I'm not going to go deep into it. Who's going to go with me? And he asked my boss's boss, can you go? He said, my kid's got a football game that night. I raised my hand. I didn't have luggage. I didn't have anything. And my boss said, he's the right guy. And there were two people over me, but I raised my hand and said, I'll do it. And he said, he's the right guy. Got in the company plane, flew with the chairman of the company, and just weathered the storm. I didn't have any clothes for 2 days. It was pretty intense.
This is the same story as mine. So how old were you at this moment?
I was 20, right, same as you. I was 26. I was 26.
So you had to go in some kind of PR, marketing, packaging, presenting the situation in the best possible light role. That's what you were doing.
And I got eaten alive. I got eaten alive. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready.
Right.
And the chairman, he wasn't ready either. And we kind of weathered and had a great bond together. And I remember years later when I won an award and he talked about that moment and talked about me raising the hand. I think that people, if you feel decent and you feel you can do it, and people aren't raising their hand these days. They're waiting for others to push them or waiting for something to do it. But you got to just raise your hand sometimes. I've done it all my life. I've always walked and talked. I've always been this person that, found things on their own because the world will not find them for you.
What great resulting lessons, though, to come out of something you were nervous with and that you say you didn't do well going to Colorado that day, but it sounds like it had some beneficial, lasting impact on you. And I know for me it did as well when my knees were wobbling, saying to the group that, hello, my name is not Charlton Heston, but here's who I am.
Wow, that's yours is a different world. Mine was just, I was there. I had nothing to do. That it was a Friday. I had nothing to do. My boss had two bosses had families and life, and I just said, look, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And just raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Fast. I like that. Just raise your hand. Don't blink. As I was saying as well, they're synonymous. I'm grateful that Calfee, Halter, and Griswold has once again agreed to partner with us. With offices in Ohio and Washington, D.C., this full-service national law firm focuses on all aspects of business and the law, including corporate and finance, intellectual property, and government relations. Let me be clear. I actually approach companies with whom I would like to partner. We just don't accept marketing dollars from anyone. I have been referring my CEO and entrepreneur friends to Calfee for years. I really believe in the firm. One of their notable practice areas is in mergers and acquisitions. And recently, for instance, I introduced a successful entrepreneur in the Midwest to Calfee when he told me that a European-based conglomerate wanted to buy his business. Calfee works with large corporations as well as privately held companies throughout the U.S. and Canada and in Europe and Asia too. So whether it's selling your own business or the more routine needs of creating your first will or anything in between, this firm can really do it all in terms of legal needs. Once again, the firm is Calfee, Halter & Griswold, and you can find them at calfee.com or on the Up2 Foundation website. So your final corporate role, you went from not doing that Colorado field trip well to doing very well later in your corporate career. What was it like being the head of marketing, corporate marketing, branding, PR? What exactly were you doing at Progressive? Because frankly, it's one of the most recognizable brands in the United States, period. And it's certainly at the top of the insurance industry. And it's one of the largest companies in America as well. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because then we're going to get into what it's like being a solo entrepreneur.
No, at Progressive, it's just one it's the most amazing culture you'll ever find. When the inside mantra is, true to our name. If you go into Progressive, you better be progressive. And I really took it that same way. When I showed up there, I showed up. And I was pushing against the grain. I've been always working with advertising agencies and things like that all my life. And I'm a creative myself, but I said, look, let's do something different. Let's start our own internal agency, within the company. So we don't have to we had great agencies outside, but we didn't want to always lean on that agency for creativity. So I could walk out of my office. We started an internal agency before it was cool to do so. We ran the department like it was a network, Adam. I lived in LA for 15 years. LA is the king of storytelling.
Showtime.
Showtime. And I said, look, I'm going to run it like a network, like a Hollywood network, like an HBO, like a Netflix, like, any kind of big studio, 20th century. And I would have showrunners, I would have characters, I would have programming. And it was before it was cool to do, before Netflix was around. It was, this was 15, 16 years ago. And I said, let's do this and create these characters and create these stories and not necessarily sell product, but sell the stories. I mean, you look at this, We All Become Our Parents, this guy Dr. Rick, he's a parental life coach. I mean, there's no mention of Progressive in there until the last few seconds. At Home with Baker, there was no mention of Progressive until the last few seconds. You tell stories like the networks did. We were putting out 30-second shows, not spots. We had showrunners, not product managers. We had a very fast treadmill. We were doing really creative things, both with our external agencies and internal agencies. And we bought media inside as well. So we weren't dependent
that
on
show
the rest of the world.
with you call him, is it Dr. Smith? Is that his name, Dr. Smith?
Dr. Rick. And we keep
Rick.
his name as Dr. Rick. We All Become Our Parents. I'll give you a book soon that he wrote.
No. So I love those episodes. They're like episodes of a TV show. It's almost like they should make a movie about them. But that's a great example of you telling a story, and only at the end do we hear about Progressive. One of the aspects of leadership that I think is the most underrated is consensus building. Like at the end of the day, the buck stops here and you have to make a decision. But to get people to believe in what you want to do involves consensus building. So I bet it took some time for you to create this in-house marketing agency as opposed to going outside to like a Wall Street firm. Can you talk about what that was like, building a consensus, the obstacles to get there, whether it's budget or personalities or turf or otherwise? What was it like trying to do such a huge idea inside a corporate culture?
It was brutal at first. It really was. The first couple of years were tough. I came in a little too hot, Adam. I probably came in a little too confident, and because I saw it clearly in my own mind of how a network would be better than just a department. I've always run kind of different departments differently, much more collegial, much more team, much more group kind of thing versus just Jeff-centric kind of departments. But it was tough because the company had been around a long time and people were set in their ways. Some people did not want to change, and that was tough on me. It was tough on me.
Yeah.
It was very tough. And but once we started getting the characters out there, once we started taking more risks. Once people started getting into this thing because it was like much more fun than going through this hierarchical kind of thing. If you raise your hand in my world, you can do pretty well. And people started raising their hand and really getting into it. And like one after the other, it started working and the results started coming. And the Flow campaign was getting fresher and better. We were doing more improvisational work with Flow versus doing scripts. We had Flowbron, which was half Flow and half LeBron James.
Part LeBron James. Unbelievable. Yeah.
It was just fun. We did some stuff with Marshawn Lynch, which was very risky when he was not talking about the Super Bowl. He wasn't, he was here so he doesn't get fired. We did some stuff with him that was fun. It was all about relevance, Adam. And if you're relevant in the marketing field and the people felt relevant, you never lose. But it's hard to stay relevant. So we started, especially with shows, you have to keep these shows relevant. The big shows that leave, the shows that they don't leave because people don't want them anymore. The writers get tired. The writers get tired.
How do you stay grounded, though, in spite of all of your success? You seem to me like you're quite grounded and that you remain authentic with your self-evaluation. Like twice today, you've already said you were coming in hot 2 times. Or how do you remain grounded, or who holds you accountable in your life? How do you deal with ego?
I think my family believes I'm no better, no worse. I'm no better, no worse than anybody else. I'm just trying to help people every day. I look at people. If you ever look at me and say, what is Jeff Charney about? It's about 3 things. 6-letter words: growth, better, change. And finally, the other 6-letter word, family. Everything you go back to me is about, if I grow, if I get better, if I change, that's my best day. And people that love growth, better, change work really well with me. People that don't, they don't. And I think that it's always been what I'm about. You will grow me today. The story you told me, I will go to a checkout person today and learn something from her or him. And I just love growth, better, change. And my family, which is the biggest 6-letter word for me, that's what keeps me grounded. And my wife, my kids. I'm the biggest child. When I'm in corporate America and I'm driving, what I used to drive to work, and when I show up at that door, I really show up. I really show up. And when I leave that place and get off the phone and get off my things, when I'm with my family, I show up there too. I have to be present, and my family holds me accountable.
Do you think that focus on family comes from either a tight family culture for you, or in my case, my parents unfortunately got divorced when I was really young, so it wasn't, in spite of my mother's excellent solo performance, it wasn't a traditional family setup. How does your upbringing impact what type of family leader you are today, if you reflect backwards?
And again, Adam, I'm being open here. My parents were divorced when I was fairly young too, but I had great relationships with both parents. They were so unique in their own way. I'm surprised they ever got married. Unfortunately, they did, but they should never have been together, and they weren't together, very often. They were much better separate.
Although the world wouldn't have Jeff Charney, so I think it's good that they did. I mean, Jeff Charney in the house, thanks to them.
Thank you. And then really, I look at Alan and Shirley, who were my parents, and I'll send you pictures of them. They're wonderful people. I think having that broken home, to me, said that I just couldn't have my kids face that. I can't, the fear I had for money was tough. I don't never want them to feel that urge to worry about money. And I never want them to feel that urge that their parents wouldn't be together. And it's not easy. My wife's the greatest person of all time, but it's not easy. It's compromise. But it's more out of fear that I didn't want them to feel the same way I did. And I'm sure you did too, Adam.
Right.
No matter what people say, when your parents are divorced, it does mess with you a little bit.
Yeah.
And it gives you a little chip in your shoulder.
We're all born into a story. We're all born into not only a story, but often it's like somebody else's story. And we then have the ability to make history, no pun intended.
So Adam, just one thing, you control the narrative. You control it, not me, not my family. Everybody out there controls their own narrative. They write their own story. Again, you're the only one standing in the way of making history. And I know I sound like I'm a marketer, but I truly believe it. And, we're on this earth. It's, it's whatever, it's 3:38 right now, and we're not going to get it'll be 3:39 in 30 seconds. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
got to maximize this time while we're here. And I know it.
I love that.
I'm not trying to be overly urgent, but I just tell you, time is fleeting. My parents passed, unfortunately, and it's tough.
It's good to be focused like that and driven. I struggle a little bit, though. When does focus become tunnel vision? Focus,
Yeah.
good. Tunnel vision, not as good. Have you ever had a scenario where you were focused to get something done or to achieve something, but that might keep you in this tunnel vision scenario where you don't see another opportunity on the side that you could have jumped into? How do you deal with
No,
that?
we all get that way, Adam. You have to put your head down and get things done. And I think that's the beauty of the people I've had around me, where they can say, Jeff, come on, come on, dude, slow down,
Yeah.
down.
The accountability
deep
I was
breath.
talking about. Yeah.
The accountability. I think people, like, I'm big enough for anybody, even though I'm talking fast, I'm moving fast, I'm the one person that you can give feedback to and say, hey, man, slow it down, dude. Put it in a different gear shift. And I think the people around me will keep me from doing that. My family keeps me from doing that. I fire myself, literally, Adam, I will fire myself. Literally look in the mirror. I'm not sure if you've ever been fired, Adam. And I'm looking in the listeners. If you've ever been fired, and I was fired when I was a kid, and I will literally stand in front of the mirror and look at myself and say, Jeff Charney, you're fired. And I'll get that terrible feeling in my heart, like I did when I was fired when I was a kid. I will get that terrible, terrible, terrible feeling. And I'll say, but wait, Jeff, you have one more chance. You can replace, if you can go in tomorrow and replace Jeff Charney with Jeff Charney, which sounds weird, you got one more chance. And I would fire myself, and I would come in and like, oh my
What's an
gosh, what I've
example
learned
of
from
that?
Jeff Charney.
What would be the scenario that you had to fire yourself? What is that, like you said something you wish you hadn't, or literally you executed poorly on a project, or what's an example?
I got complacent. I kind of believed my own, BS, or believed my own headlines. I got complacent. I got where I wasn't driving, wasn't as relevant as I should be. And even just to give you an example, as Make History, I started this company called Make History. It's not for everybody. It's invite only, and it's only to work with history makers. I will work with history makers, decision makers that will make history. The Ubers of the world, the Teslas of the world, the Venmos of the world, the Airbnbs of the world, the Spotifys of the world, on and on and on. I want to work with people that will make history.
So
and make
companies,
decisions
this is
Companies.
a company service provider.
Company
okay.
brands,
Marketing.
companies, brands, individuals. Company
Got
brands,
it.
individuals. Not necessarily marketing, disrupting entire ecosystems.
Okay.
Disrupting markets. Look at what.
So
Spotify
I remember
did.
you did this big splash, and I read about it in some magazine, and then I go to the website, and it's just one page, Make History, and there's a little bottom right, submit your name to get on our waiting list. Like that was it.
It's just the scarcity model, Adam. It goes back to my Raytheon job where I didn't want the job. I went back to the scarcity model, which it does work because I'm not going to automate myself. There's only a few Jeff Charneys. My team is, I slide food and water under their door. They create. They're brilliant people, but it's not for everybody. It cannot, and you have to work. We don't suffer people that don't make decisions well. And you got to make a decision, and you have to be willing to make history. If your name is Make History, you better make history. If your name is Michael Jordan, you want to make
that's a
Michael
lofty
Jordan.
goal. That's a lofty expectation.
Even if you get through to us, which is not easy to do. If you get through to us,
I know. How
long?
How long have you and I been trying to get together? 5 years. I mean,
Oh my God,
patience
Adam,
is
it's
a
just
virtue. I understand it's
it's
tough
just-
to get through.
But we got through, and it's worth it, Adam. It really is, and I mean it. But even if we
Likewise.
get through, because people would come to our website, they couldn't get through. They go to LinkedIn, they couldn't get through. They finally text me and say, Charney, come on, let me in. And we did, and had to pass what's called a Make History Index, which
Okay.
is really the best hour for somebody or the worst hour for somebody. 75 quick questions, relevance, this or that. How flexible are you? What a great decision maker are you? What a great leader are you? How creative are you? You get a score right then and there. And when their score didn't come back so high, they got a little bit upset. Like, why don't you want to work with me? What can I do? What can I do? And they wanted it even more.
So the higher the score, the better. Or the better for you. Okay, it's not like a personality profile where there's no wrong score. It's literally like you need to score a high level to be able to work in this make history scenario.
Yeah, you have to score. You've got to be a risk taker, a creative, a person that not passive aggressive, that doesn't play politics, that just eschews all that stuff.
I'm definitely not that creative. I planned on asking you that. Like, I honestly feel that's not one of my strengths, being creative. Do you think being creative can be taught? Like, I am mostly around entrepreneurs and founders of companies, and they're just wired a certain way. And now every school teaches entrepreneurship, and I think most schools also teach creative marketing. Do you think someone can be taught to be creative, or is it, my view, like entrepreneurship, where you either are or you aren't an entrepreneur?
I think an entrepreneur, you can teach an entrepreneur to be creative. You can. A creative has just got to be trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. It's risk, risk, risk. And if you're risk adverse, you won't be creative. If you're worried about what other people think, you won't be creative. You got to literally get on a treadmill with me and with my team, and you will become better and better and better. And that's the treadmill I've been on all my life. I just keep trying and trying and trying. So it's not something you're born with. It's something that is trial and error. And if you have confidence in yourself, you're secure on the outside, which is hard for anybody, and secure on the inside. That's hard, Aaron. That's my kind of blanket theory of, if you're secure on the outside, secure on the inside, you can do whatever you want. But people have insecurities.
That's good, that being the secure in oneself and willing to try something is the makings to be creative. I'm really digesting what you're saying here, because I really do struggle with creativity sometimes. So not to make this a self-help session for me, but I'm trying to think about me and my own problem set as you tell me about this index. So the index is then sent to the potential client.
Well, you get it live. You get it live.
Okay.
You get your results live. And it's just the biggest thing, Adam, I tell you, reason why people don't do well on it is because people they might want to change, but they really can't change. And I know change is an overused word, but in the history world, it's change. If you don't want to change, you can still do great things. You could still do wonderful things, but you can't make history. And that if you cannot change or are willing to change, people are willing, but they really can't go there, it's over for you.
So
and
we know you have an example in your own past. You're so passionate about this. Clearly, you've probably had some of your own trial and error with this. We all face the inevitable curves in the road. Like, was there ever a moment that comes to mind where you had to make a certain change, but you were a little hamstrung, you were a little stuck? Like, how do you get unstuck in your own journey?
I think to me, Adam, I realized long ago, like every time I would join a company, they'd see the shiny new toy Jeff Charney, and it would be great for the first few months. Then I'd have that call. Somebody would call me, "Hey Jeff, what are you doing tonight? Let's have dinner. Let's have a drink. Let's do it at breakfast," or something like that. And I knew what was coming. And they would say, "Jeff, you're coming in too hot. We love what you're doing. We love your energy. We love your creativity.
Slow it down.
But I'm not sure. Settle down." And there were times when I would say, okay, Mr. Pleaser, who I was at that point, okay, I'll slow down. And then I just slowly slow down for a little while and then start gearing up again. And then start again. And then when I finally realized that I'm not going to change who I am, I'm going to be who I am, is when my career really took off. And I was not disrespectful to my bosses ever when they told me this. I just saying, look, this is what you hired me for. I remember on the interview, we talked about this. I asked about change, and I'm a person that loves it. And there's probably, out of 100 people, there's probably 3 that love change. I'm one of those 3. And I like growth. I like getting better, all these things.
No, but I love
if you
that.
don't like it,
I want to underline what you said there. You just decided to lean into who you are rather than trying to fit the coaching. And we all have to be coached somewhat. That's why it's called work. It's not like we're literally just an artist doing whatever we want on a painting. But when you have to work with others, sometimes you have to do things that the others want. It reminds me one time when I was running a small business, feeling not really qualified on the financial side of the business and balance sheets and cash flow statements and Excel spreadsheets. the founder of the company encouraged me to take an accounting class. So I worked my tail off at night after work, young family at home, trying to do well with this accounting class. And after, I think it was like a 9-month class, it was done in the spring. I went from horrible in accounting to just a little less horrible. I wasn't good. And so at that point for me, maybe I was like 29 or 30 at the time. I realized I'm just going to lean into who I am and focus on what apparently my skill set and strengths are. And I'll find other people to help with what they're good at, in this case, accounting and the financial stuff. So it kind of reminds me of what you're saying. Instead of not coming in hot, instead of going slower, you decide to hit the turbocharge on things you know you believe in, build the consensus, and then go for it and don't blink.
And I remember even, and Adam, really don't get me wrong, I am the best person to take feedback. I take feedback, I write it down, I listen, I try to work on certain things. Even years ago when I was doing scripts, you write scripts for commercials and things like that. And I remember talking to one of our characters and said, look, I'm kind of funnier than the writers. And wow, she really was. And I said, let's just go improv. And people say, you can't go improv.
She was funnier, not you. I thought you meant you were funnier.
She was funnier, and she said, let's go improv.
Talent, the actress, yeah.
Let me put talent. And I remember saying, well, everybody around me said, you can't do that, you can't do it. And she made a really good point. And ever since then, I surrounded everything I've done is tried to put really funny people in the room, like Curb Your Enthusiasm or Seinfeld. Let them just go. Let them go. And when she suggested it, it's like, well, I can't. I've been doing scripts all my life. I mean, come on, I got to get the script.
That's not the way to do it. Right.
It is the way to do it. And it's like improv is so much better, especially when you're telling stories, and especially we have great, talented people. So ever since then, I hired an improv, but it wasn't my suggestion. It was her suggestion.
Right.
And she was right.
So now you're creating, after Make History's successful launch, you mentioned at the beginning that ChatGPT was introduced to us consumers. And so how did that change your focus post Make History into Make History AI?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, Adam. I remember November 30th, 2000, literally November 30th, 2022. I don't remember the date because ChatGPT hit me. I saw it that day, November 30th, that day I saw ChatGPT. And I'm paid a lot of money to see things ahead. And that's what I do. I look at the surf, I see where the wave's coming, and I'm paid that money to do it. And I absolutely, positively missed it. It pissed me off so much. November 30th was the day. December 1st, I got my small little team together and said, hey, how do we miss it? We're not going to miss it anymore. We're starting today. And we're going to create something that has never been done before, which is an MBDB is one of my things. I want to do something that's never been done before. We're going to teach a machine to be creative. And we're not going to go through the big 8 different people that are doing this right now. We're going to do it ourselves. And it was again, out of something. I fired myself, and that day I fired myself and said, how could I have missed it?
Because you missed the AI trend, the large language model trend.
I missed it.
This is a year and a half ago. So for the past year and a half, you've been downloading your brain into a chat bot that we'll eventually use or something. Okay.
It's more than Jeff Charney in a box. It's really, it gets better. It's a custom thing. I love this industry. I'm doing it nobody loves this industry more than me, but this industry has to change. It hasn't changed. It hasn't, disrupted itself in 150 years. And I'm telling you, the time is now. We're all going to be working, AI can make us better. It's not making us worse. I'm not trying to do anything, but if you say a computer can make us better, a calculator can make us better, it always did.
Yes.
Imagine what AI can do for us. The best
right.
creatives will be greater and greater and greater. There's so much more about Make History and creativity, the AI part of this, that makes it even more exciting than even the human intelligence stuff I was working on for so long. It's that intersection between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. That sweet spot is what we're all going to be doing for many, many years to come. And I think the agency world is ready for it. Our waiting list is huge already. We're just looking for the right time, right place.
Your waiting list for the Make History AI tool is
Yes.
So it's already in the marketplace. It's already available for deployment.
It's available. We're working only with invite-only clients, Adam. The people that we're working with now.
Right.
It's available
but you're done,
right
though.
now.
I mean, I guess you're never done, but I mean, it's available now to be implemented.
It's available now. It's not perfect yet, but it's getting closer and closer and closer. It's a year and a half. It's probably the toughest thing I've ever done in my life, Adam. The toughest thing ever, but it's the most rewarding thing, and it will be something that will keep me and this industry more relevant than we ever have been. And
your calculator example is giving me some pause, because a calculator teaches us to be more accurate with like black and white things, addition, subtraction. But right now I'm trying to think about AI making us more creative. But I guess I believe you, because I experiment with poetry, I have to confess. I like poetry. I like reading poetry. I like listening to poetry in the form of like rap music, but also traditional poetry. And a while back, started doing birthday poems, like at dinners, like for loved ones. And now I use Perplexity, not a sponsor, for like some prompts to help me. Like if I was doing a Jeff Charney birthday poem, I would populate it with some prompts related to maybe some things I know about you. And then I could edit it, of course. But I guess that's a tiny example of AI making me more creative.
It's never gonna replace the human, because it's only as good as the human will make it, because you have to make decisions. You look at that poem you wrote, you got to make decisions on it. You got to make adjustments to it.
Right.
But imagine just how fast a song, a poem, anything can be written with the help of computer. It's like years ago, the computer. I mean, the personal computer, people doubted that would help us. They doubted, the calculator would help us. They doubted all these things. They doubted emails and text. This is just one of those things that people are going to realize years from now, and we'll realize this, that it's going to be something you'll never realize you could ever do without. I mean, you're going to realize this years from now.
Kudos for you for being genuine with yourself about, boy, we missed this initial AI launch, but you decided to jump into it. You didn't blink, and you had your team focus on it. Right now, why don't we do some shorter questions and answers, if we might, just for some fun. I've noticed your mind thinks kind of quickly, so you're probably good with the short, quick.
You go. I'm ready,
workflow.
Man.
What's your favorite TV commercial of all time, not including something you created?
I would never include something I created. I think the best one I've ever seen is 1984, Apple, 40 years ago. That's why Super Bowl today makes me so sad, because 40 years ago, 1984 came. It was only shown one time. Powerful commercial. Keep going, man. Let's go. Bring it on, man.
Can I tell you my favorite commercial, though?
Yeah, go. Come on, please. I'm sorry. Yes.
You said Super Bowl. I think mine was a Super Bowl ad, the Mean Joe Green Coke commercial.
Oof. So
remember
good.
that?
Hey, kid. Come on. That was like, you got tears in your eyes. I mean, it's just
unbelievable.
Beautiful.
I know I got chills thinking about it. Do you think there's, other than your own brands, a brand that has such an enviable brand today in the world that you think is just the best brand?
I think Apple probably still has it. I think Apple's laying in the weeds on the AI side. I think they have the data, they have the creativity, they have the infrastructure, they have the ecosystem. I still think they've lost a step, since Jobs, passed, whatever. But they're still Apple. I was the first in line to get Vision Pro. It's powerful. Our Make History AI is what Vision Pro is to Oculus for what we're doing, and we're Vision Pro, and the rest are Oculus.
Okay.
I think they're just laying in the weeds. It's a great brand, great technology.
Apple, great brand, yeah. I was, preparing to ask you this today, so I was thinking about it on the treadmill this morning. At first, I came up with the idea of Walmart, but then I think I have a brand that Walmart might be like the most known, but I think the Four Seasons brand, the hotel chain, Four Seasons, doesn't your mind just relax with excellence and like luxury when you hear Four Seasons?
It does, but there's also Ritz-Carlton. So it's like you got to think about, how to make it different. And I like it. I do like it, though. I like it. What is brand, Adam? What is brand? And to me, the simplest way to look at brand is what people would say about you when you left the room. What would they say about Four Seasons when
Yes.
you left the room? What would they say
Yes.
about Ritz-Carlton? What would they say about Apple? What would they say about Progressive?
Yes.
But I like it. I like it. And brand is really important. Marketing is everything, and everything is marketing, man. It really is.
Boy, what you just said led right into this question that I prepared for you. I was watching.
Oh, gosh.
I was watching Tucker Carlson on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of days ago. So whatever you think of those two characters, they're the tops of their respective fields. Tucker Carlson,
They really are.
Joe Rogan. So as of yesterday, it was out 48 hours. There were already 4 million downloads of this 3-hour program. But one thing that Tucker said, it stuck with me because it's on our theme of humility. This show's theme is leaders who are as humble as they are successful. Yes. So on the program, Tucker said, I hadn't heard this before, humility is defined by how honest you can be about talking about oneself, talking about yourself.
Wow. Jeez.
So you just said, what do people say about Four Seasons when the Four Seasons manager leaves the room? What do you think people say about you? I'll make it better. What do you think your kids would say about you if you weren't in the room?
Man, that's a great question, Adam. And I got 5 of them, and I think universally they know I'm committed to the family. So that's a given. My kids, when I'm with them, I'm with them. When I'm at work, I'm at work. There's times I haven't missed many games. I haven't had to because my companies have been wonderful. But I think my kid would say first, hey, family matters to this kid, and family above all else. Just if something happens to me, my dad, no matter what I've done, he's going to be there. He's going to figure it out. No matter what I've done, he knows he'll figure it out. And that's probably what they would say. And he would out-create it to figure it out. He'll figure something out for me. And they always, no matter what, and again, I hate to say it, I have 5 great kids, 5 amazing
Don't hate
kids.
to say that. That's terrific.
I know, but it's but until one bad decision, they're all great kids right now until, unfortunately, they make one bad decision. But if they make that bad decision, their dad's going to be the first one to help them.
Well, that's an awesome thing to have said about you. How about yourself? You've mentioned several times that you in your business life were coming in too hot. What would you say about yourself that maybe you would give your younger self advice about? So if you could go back and talk to the 21-year-old version of you, what would you tell the younger Jeff Charney?
I think I would tell them just to, be secure, man. Be secure. And I wasn't as secure then. And if you find that security, even things that make you insecure, just it's not real.
Don't worry about
secure.
The things that make you insecure.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about them because even years ago, Adam, you and I share the same haircut. We share. And I remember.
Don't remind me.
No, but it works for us. But I remember years ago, Adam, I was so nervous about losing my hair, man. It was like, oh my gosh. And I remember I met my wife. I said, who cares? Who cares? And literally, it was almost like it freed me. And I remember she said, who cares? We were in Seattle at the time. We went to a barbershop. We shaved it all off. And it was the most freeing thing. And I was just so insecure about it. And when I realized she wasn't, and it's not real, Jeffrey. It's not, you call me Jeffrey versus Jeff. She calls me that, but it's like, it's not real. It freed me. And I think that's where, just get rid of that because it only matters to you. It doesn't matter to the rest of the world. And if it matters to you so much.
That's we're bringing humorous at the beginning talking about the hair, but that's actually a good metaphor for the things that we worry about. Like shed them, cut them out. Don't let them dominate your concerns. And it's very freeing, very liberating.
And what Michael Jordan did so many things for sports, but he did much even better things for men in general because he shaved his head and it made it cool. And
he made it cool. Yeah. Well, Jeff, you make this show cool, and that's something I'm not good at. So grateful that you were able to spend this time with us. Isn't it amazing how fast an hour goes?
Oh my gosh, Adam, it's such an easy conversation. You got to go bigger, man. We got to market you and take you bigger, man. Let's go.
Okay. Todd, did you hear that? We're going to do that. But in the meantime, thank you for doing this.
We're going to up 3. We're going to up 3, 4, 5.
Awesome.
Let's go, man.
Awesome. Up 5. This is our 5th season. So maybe it should be called Up 5. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff.
We'll do it.
God bless you, man. You're awesome. I learned a lot
Thank
from
you. Big
today.
virtual hugs to you, man, and virtual
Hugging
hugs
you.
to all of you out there, okay? See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Up To podcast. We aim to showcase superachievers who remain humble in the hope that their stories will inspire others to remain humble throughout life's journey. For feedback, guest suggestions, or any other inquiries, you can email Adam Kaufman directly at adam@up2foundation.org. That's adam@up2foundation.org. A special thanks to our longtime sponsors, Vivid Front and Calfee. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Up To wherever you get your favorite podcast. BLC Digital Strategies proudly produces the Up To podcast, located right outside the nation's capital in McLean, Virginia. Visit blcdigitalstrat.com for all of your podcasting needs. We'll see you next time.